Hello friends, this is Bhavatosh here. Welcome to my channel Perfect Analyst. Today we are continuing our DAX functions. Today we are going to learn about two important DAX functions and what is the difference between these two. One is add columns, the other one is select columns. So let me go to the definition and then I will explain you in a simple way how or what is the difference between these two. So add columns allows you to add new calculated columns in an existing table. Suppose you have one table and you want some additional column be added into your table. In that case, you are going to use add columns. So the functions like after after using the functions, it will keep all the existing columns in the table, but in addition to that, it will add more columns to that. Whereas select columns, it returns a table with selected columns from the table and new columns specified by the DAX expressions. Suppose you have one table and you want to select any particular columns. Suppose you have 5 columns and you want to select only 3 columns to be a separate table. So in that case, you are going to use select columns. So once I will run through one example, then I'll come back and show you or I will tell you what is the difference between these two. So let me go to the Powerbi desktop. Here I have two tables. One is sheet 1 and the other one is sheet 2 table. So I can rename it employee 1. It's employee 1 table and I can rename this as employee 2 table. So there are two tables. Employee 1 we have name, city and state of any employees. Employee 2 we have his salary, age and work time, how much time he work in any organization. That information I have. ID is common for both. Now first we will do the add columns. So for adding a columns, I am creating a separate table. So I will select new table and in this table I want to add a new columns to the existing table. So sheet 2, suppose here we have a sheet. This is employee 2. So in employee 2 we have salary and work time. I want another column here where I want to know how much earnings or the total earnings of this ID 1 employee. So it should be 1,50,000 into 24. So that number I want in a separate column in separate table. So I'm creating a table here. Employee 3. So I'm adding columns from table employee 2. So in this employee table, I'm adding name. So you have to create a name of that new column. It's total earnings. So we have created new columns. Now I am going to calculate expression. sum of here salary into multiply summation, okay, into sum of and salary into work time, right? So this is your DAX functions. What this function will do, it will create a first a table called employee 3. In that table, it will add columns. The name of the columns is total earnings, and in the total earnings, it will give you the result of salary into work time. So I'm just entering here. Okay. So this is the table created, and in that table, this is our existing tables where we have 4 columns. Here we have 5 columns with a separate column called total earnings, and in that this salary into work time, this is multiplying and given the result. This is the total earning of that particular employee. This is about add columns function. Now let's comes to select columns. So I am trying for select column now, creating a separate table, employee 4. So what this function will do, it will create a separate tables with a selected columns. For example, in employee 1 we have name, city and state and ID. I want only this 2 column in a separate table. So I will create a table with only these 2 information, or maybe ID, name and city, these 3 information. I don't want this state. So for that, I have created this separate table, employee 4. I will use the function select columns table, from which table you want the selected columns. So I am given the employee 1, right? Then what is that name of the columns headings? I am returning the same ID from, okay, name, comma, ID, then name to city from city, ID, sorry, ID, name and city, right? Just 1 minute. We want, yes, ID, name and city, correct? So ID, right? So ID, employee 1 ID, name, and I want another column city, right? I'm just putting city, comma, from city. So this is the dex function of select columns. I will explain this dex function. In here I am creating a separate table called employee 4 and I am selecting columns, three columns, id, name and city from employee 1 table, right? So this table is created with id, city and name columns. So now I come to this difference and I hope you are already know the difference. In add columns, it retain all the existing columns. If you go and check here, when I have added, I have used this add columns in employee 3. This ID, name, city and state already available here, right? So it's written all these four columns. In addition to that, it has created a separate column. So that is add columns function. Whereas in employee 4, in the select columns, completely created new set of table or new tables. So it has not written the employee 1 all the columns. It has only selected a particular columns from this table and created a separate table. So that is the difference between these two I have just mentioned here. Add columns retain all the existing columns in the table and adds more columns to that. But the select column starts with no columns. So it starts from 0. In that only you are putting all these column headings or the it's a completely new table. It completely builds a new custom subset of columns or with additional calculated columns on it. So that is the difference between these two. I hope you are clear about these two functions, and we will continue our next DAX functions. Thank you so much for watching this video.